embarking on the first leg of a journey that I've been meaning to start for a while now. It'll probably take me years. Publishing a comic. So a couple months ago, I finished the draft for the 11th issue of my comic, which I have not started the process of publishing yet. But now I'm ready to go back, revise, edit, and hopefully reach out to artists and eventually publishers and actually get it out into the world. So I wanted to document that process because as someone trying to get into the world of comics, I've looked all over the internet for step-by-step instructions and what the process is really like, and there's actually not a lot of information out there. There's a good amount that I've found on the writing of the comic, but I couldn't really find anything about reaching out to artists or how to find an artist or what the publishing process looks like or like the legal side of that, and I just wanted to share what I found out as I found it out with you. So today we're going to be editing the 3rd issue of my comic. I've already done the revisions and edits on the 1st and 2nd, and I'm basically just me following the same process I did with this one, so it shouldn't make too much of a difference where I start. So for this, you will just need a small pad of sticky notes, a nicely sharpened pencil, and a printed out copy of your current work in progress. And I'm using my FreeWrite to help with this step, in case there's any scenes that I want to completely rewrite. That way I'm not on a computer and I don't get tempted to go back and just like copy and paste what I had done previously and just tweak a couple lines this way. I have to either copy the scene down from the printed out version or rewrite the whole thing. So it's a lot easier for me to not end up writing the same scene that I did before with just like 2 minor tweaks. So let's get started. Okay, so, this issue is actually a lot worse than I thought. So, I was initially planning to take sticky notes, and whenever there was a line of dialogue that I didn't like, or a scene that I thought needed some tweaking, I would just write down my thoughts, and what I wanted to change, and how I wanted to change it, on a sticky note, and put it in there. I've done this before. It's a method that's really worked for me, because that way I have the original document untouched to go back to, but I can also have all my notes and revisions in it. But pretty much my only notes were completely redo this scene, completely redo that scene, make this scene 10 times longer, cut out all of this dialogue, it's terrible. So, I wrote this comic about 2 years ago, initially. I've been working on it for about 2 years, since I was 16. And my writing has evolved a lot in that time. It was one of the first things that I ever wrote as a comic, and I've decided to change a lot of things about the characters. Also, even if some of the scenes aren't bad, I have to cut them out because when I was revising and editing the first 2 issues, I actually changed quite a lot of the character dynamics because they were initially all just friends, and then I sort of added a conflict in. So some of the scenes in the issues now don't make sense, so that's why I have to redo a lot of the scenes. So I might actually have to go and reread the 1st and 2nd issues that I had initially rewritten on my computer, just to get a feel for where the story is. I found this super helpful when editing. Before I edit, I take a long break from whatever it is that I'm writing. Well, at least overnight, but preferably a week. And I just leave it some time to sit. Because if you go back to edit something right after you've written it, you're too in the moment, you're too attached to what you just wrote, and you're only going to read what you think you wrote or what you want to have written. So this way, if I give it at least a night, I can go into it, and I've pretty much forgotten the specifics of what I wrote. I remember the gist, and I can sort of see it with new eyes. It's the closest I can get to being someone who hasn't read it before going into edit. And then, of course, a second opinion is crucial, I find. Not just for finding mistakes and flaws, although I found it very helpful for that, but also for boosting your self-esteem, because after I write something, I'm pretty much convinced that it's terrible. But then if I send it off to my sister, who pretty much proofreads everything that I write, and she's not a professional or anything, she's 10, or 11, she's 11 now. If she reads through it, and she likes a lot of the same stuff that I do, and she likes it, then it makes me feel a little bit more like, okay, it wasn't complete garbage. and then I feel more confident and able to move on to the next issue. So I'm coming out of a long stretch of writer's block right now. I haven't written anything for probably months at this point. And I really miss writing. It's something that I used to do on a weekly basis at least, and I haven't done it in a while, and I really want to get it back into my life, and I want to start making progress, because I told myself when the year started, my New Year's resolution for January 2023 and 2023 in general was I was going to revise and edit my whole comic, everything I'd written so far, and I was going to look into publishing. And I did not get very far on that. It's now late April 2023, and I have revised and edited 2 issues that I'm not even sure I'm going to keep the way that I changed them to. So I think that if I'm going to move forward and really push myself to accomplish what I told myself I was going to, because I found that that's the number one thing that I struggle with as a writer. Like, when I actually sit down and write, I can pretty much write a whole comic issue in like 4 hours. Editing usually takes a little longer, but it's actually making myself sit down and write. Like, I'm often too anxious that I'm gonna mess it up, and the only way to get better at it is to write. And I keep telling myself that, and I hope that you listen to that advice, but I still can't take my own advice. So I'm just going to write, and if it's not good, then that's what editing is for, and that's what rewrites are for. And if in 2 years my writing style can almost change completely, then I'm sure that with a couple more years, it'll start getting somewhere good. So yeah, I'm going to go read those 2 issues, figure out if I want to keep them or if they need editing, because that's something very important. You have to get yourself back into the story, especially after a long break, especially after dealing with writer's block. I want this to be a year of writing. Like, it's the first year I've decided to do NaNoWriMo this November, just to push myself out of my comfort zone. I've never done that before. So this is going to be the year of writing, and I hope that you'll join me in this being your year of writing too. And whether that's starting a project, finishing one that you've been telling yourself you were going to finish for a long time, or if you're just still chugging along and working on a project, whatever the case, just stick with it. Even if you hit a roadblock, even if you stop working on it for months, you can get back to it. And that's what I'm going to go try and do. Okay, so a brief update. I have read the first issue, and I'm happy with it. It's pretty much how I remember it after my revisions. So I'm now going to read issue 2, which I have not actually had read for a second opinion yet. My sister's actually doing that right now, I think. Are you reading it? Yes. Okay, she says she's reading it. So I'm gonna read it, she's gonna read it, and then we'll come back to it, because before I move ahead and make major changes to the 3rd issue, I want to be sure that I'm happy with how I set it up. Because the first issue is introducing all of the characters and the first sort of like the hook and the first little plot twist that throws everybody in the action. And then the second one is pretty much just my protagonists coming to terms with each other. But the 3rd one is when I actually set up the first big plot twist that's going to change the rest of that 6-issue arc and set up the conflict for the second 6-issue arc. So I have to really get that right, and I have to be sure that it's how I want it, because otherwise I'm gonna have to redo everything. So I'm going to read the 2nd issue, and we'll see. We're back. So I have read issues 1 and 2, and they're better than I remembered them, because I usually remember things pretty negatively when it comes to my writing. So I'm happy with them. I'm content. I made a couple little dialogue edits, but it's really just as simple as taking out one word because the sentence was too long. So I'm going to start editing issue 3 again, but before I do that, I actually think that I want to change around the order in which the scenes actually take place. I'm going to keep the same basic scene structure, but I'm going to change where they are. So initially, the issue was set up so that we start and open with our heroes in what I call the soup scene, because they make soup. More happens, but we started with the heroes, we moved on to the villains, the minor villains, which then transferred to the major villains who the minor villains work for. Then we went to our heroes as they argued, and then the sort of plot twist action setup started to take place. Now, I want to move some of those things around because I feel like there was more potential and I didn't really like how it was laid out when I was reading it again. So we're now going to open with the villains, switch to the protagonist, in which I will be completely redoing the soup scene. With the villain scene, I'm just going to move it to the beginning, and I'm going to add the jealousy emotion for one character into, and just a little bit of dialogue about that, because initially they were just sort of devoted to the cause of finding our heroes, and now I think that there's actually a layer of that she's sort of jealous of one of the heroes, and it's made it a little bit personal for her. So I'm gonna add that in, then have the heroes argument, then join the minor villains, cue everything that's gonna take place. So I think that will be a better flow for the series, for the issue, and hopefully it will help me to rewrite the scenes that need a lot of tweaking if it's not set up the exact same way. I'm also allowing myself 2 more pages. Initially I was going to write a 20-page comic. They would come out monthly, and it's sort of the new wave of comics, at least based on what I've read. However, 22-page comics I still see a lot, and I feel like I could get away with adding the 2 pages. And you wouldn't think that adding 2 pages would make a big difference, but it really does. 2 pages can be an entire scene. I've done 1-page scenes before, so 2 pages can do so much. If you're sort of scared about writing something in comic format because it's just 22 pages a month to tell your story and you have to hook them onto the next one, it's actually, you can fit a lot into that small amount. And I also like the episodic nature because it lets me use cliffhangers, and I get to think about covers, and I get to think about each story arc. It's like easier for me to think about than, say, a novel. Also, it's focused on dialogue, which is my favorite part to write anyway. But I'm going to start rewriting on this. But let's get started. Welcome back to day 2. So, rewriting the first issue, or the third issue, actually took a lot longer than I thought it would. I wrote like not exactly 2,000, but like 1,807 words or something like that. So it took me a little while, but I pretty much redid 3 of the scenes, and I'm honestly much happier with them. I think, maybe. Or maybe they're absolutely terrible. I can't really tell. So because I just put it all together, did some basic editing. That took like an hour or 2, and I sent it off to my sister to test read. And I'm really not going to know what I think of it until next weekend when I read it again, when I've had some feedback, when I'm not too in the moment and I'm able to give it a slightly less objective view. I think that's the right one. Or do you want to be objective? I'm supposed to be a writer here. I should know words. But I think I should be set with this one. There's definitely some tweaks that I need to make. Like, if I'm doing 22-page issues, I thought that, adding an extra 12 pages to the actual comic itself would be enough, but, apparently, based on the scenes that I removed from the original, I'm actually 2 pages short. So I'm gonna have to spread some things out, make sure that the surprises and the splashes land on the right places. But all in all, I'd say it was successful, especially as someone coming out of writer's block. It was amazing to just sit down and write last night. Like, I haven't written like that in months. And even when I was writing, it was rewriting scenes. It wasn't writing new scenes. So I'm so happy that I did that. Thank you, because if I wasn't making this video, I wouldn't have felt like a time pressure to make myself write it, and I probably would have kept putting it off. So I am overjoyed. I'm over the moon, beyond thrilled that I actually wrote something yesterday. So, if you feel like you want to write, but you just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, just do it. You're only going to get better by writing. And I know this wasn't the most eventful video because I was pretty much just working on projects, but we've all got to start somewhere, right? So I plan on the documenting process getting a lot more in-depth, and especially once I actually get to the publishing stage, there's going to be so many things to document there. It's just hard when I'm doing it about my project because I don't want to spoil it in case I do publish it. When I publish it. So like I kept wanting to break down a scene for you, but then I'd be like, well, wait, no spoilers, not yet. But yeah, I'm going to be coming out with videos every week. Some of them will be like this, which is a little bit more like vlog style. Some of them will be more focused on tips. I want this channel to be about a lot of things, but it's still sort of figuring out its identity. But I hope you stick around to see where we go, and I appreciate you watching this so much. It means so much to me. I love making content, so I really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything in future weeks. I hope to be coming out with at least one a week. I'm aiming for posting Mondays, although I think this one's probably going to come out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday because I got a lot of editing to do in between, and I'm finishing this up on a Sunday. So whenever it comes out, I will see you in the next one. Before I leave, bye.